Miami Heat punished the Bulls last night with an 88-65 victory. The series seems all but over, but there are still many questions surrounding Dwyane Wade's health. Wade had 6 points in last night's win. It appeared he landed hard on his right knee after taking a fall-away jumper in the third quarter. He's averaged 12 points in the playoffs as opposed to 21 during the regular season. And Stephen, I'll start with you. How big of a concern is Wade's knee?
Well, I think it's the concern is elevated where I'm concerned simply because I hear him and his teammates are talking about it a bit more than usual. That's not something that customarily takes place with any team coached by not coached, but run by Pat Riley. It's just not something that they have. He's certainly not using it as an excuse. I'm certainly not trying to imply that at all. I watch him play. I noticed that he's a bit gimpy. I know all about the bone bruise in his knee and that it hasn't gotten worse, but it hasn't gotten better. And as a result of that, you've got to be concerned because there's some mileage on that body. He's averaged about 34 minutes game this year. He only missed 13 games. It wasn't like he missed 30 or 40 or something along those lines. He's just playing through it. But you do get to a point where you have to start wondering, and I'm going to tell you why from my perspective. You have to start wondering because LeBron James is a businessman. And even though the Miami Heat are an elite organization, and I think that a place where, he'll probably, in all probability, will remain for a very, very long time, I think what people need to remember is that as much as he respects and loves the family kind of atmosphere that the great owner Mickey Harrison and the great Pat Riley, that's right, I preface it by saying great because I admire them both. I think it's important to recognize that LeBron James is in Miami because of Dwyane Wade. That's the person he's got the love for. And if Dwyane Wade is not healthy and Lord forbid Dwyane Wade's career ultimately ends up ending prematurely, then you got to wonder whether or not LeBron James is going to stick around South Beach past the next couple of years. But that's something that could be discussed and debated at a later date when it's more relevant. But anytime I see Dwyane Wade hobbling in any way, those are the kind of thoughts that come to my mind.
Yep, that's a good thought. I'm with you on that thought. Stephen A., this seems more serious to me than the other knee issue that Dwyane had a year ago seemed at that time. And remember what happened? Remember a year ago, the turning point game 4 at Indiana where they're down 2-1? Remember the second half? We're thinking, can Dwyane do it? And did he do it? He took over the second half of that game. He winds up with 30 in that game, 28 the next game, 41 in the closeout game against Indiana. And then remember the NBA Finals last year, Stephen A., we're thinking, can he go? Can he go? And you pointed out he had off the court issues, family issues he was fighting through also. But remember, even in the finals last year, Game 3, he goes 25, 7, and 7. Game 4, 25 points. In the closeout game, he had 20. So I was seeing a lot more life from Dwyane Wade last year than I saw, say, last night. Now, he took a shot on the knee again from, I believe it was Jimmy Butler in the first half. And when he was over on the bench, they had to pull his bandage up, and it was clear that he really had it contorted. And he said after the game, well, you guys got to see it for the first time, but trying to pull my kneecap over away from the bruise so I can play more pain-free. And then Brian Windhorst had a terrific piece on ESPN.com today saying that Dwyane had expressed to the local media that he has 3 bone bruises in the same knee. Well, it doesn't seem to be getting better. It seems to be getting a little bit worse. So I ask you, isn't it fair to say it's worse than it was a year ago when we thought it was an issue?
Well, it's different than it was a year ago. I think that I don't know if the bone bruise was what was ailing him last year. I know that it's something that he brought up. But Dwyane Wade doesn't live in the excuse business, and he never makes excuses, and he usually avoids discussing his injuries as best as he possibly can. And it's something that obviously Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, and that whole Miami Heat crew discouraged discussing it. But it's unavoidable because it's so obvious. And it's gotten to the point where you're wondering whether or not he can go. You're finding yourself asking yourself, can he make it through the rest of these playoffs? Now, he will tell you he can and he will. He will tell you that they said that they've told him, his doctors and what have you, that it's not going to get any worse. It's not regressing, but it's not necessarily going to get better. So it's just a matter of him figuring out how to play through it. But when you see him going up against Chicago, it's one or two thoughts of thinking. Number one, that he's really hurt and that you can question, like I said, how long he's going to last. Or number two, Chicago is tougher than the typical team because they're so big, they're so physical, they come at you. And you know, somebody pointed out to me yesterday, you know, very astutely, I might add, that Dwyane Wade usually struggles against Chicago and Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Those are the two places, not meaning the teams, but the two locales where he really has great games. My issue is that if the physical prowess of the Chicago Bulls factor into this in any way, then you've got to be rooting for the Knicks to play next. Because Indiana's big and physical. And big and physical. Even though, strangely enough, as you sit there and talk to some members of the Miami Heat, they actually prefer Indiana because Indiana has difficulty scoring, and they believe no matter what problems the New York Knicks have in shooting the basketball, it never seems to be an issue when they play Miami.
Yeah, that's true.
so they're like, you know, they're like, we don't care how they look against everybody else. We're telling you against us, suddenly everybody makes shots, which drives them nuts. So, again, you've got some people from a basketball perspective that want Indiana, and then you have others from a physical perspective in terms of Dwyane Wade that sits there and looks at, you know, Indiana might not be the ideal team for him, but obviously some other people would prefer Indiana to the Knicks.
Okay, here's my bottom line to this discussion. A year ago, we debated back and forth, whose team is it? Is it D. Wade's team?
No.
Is it LeBron's? Batman, Robin, Robin, Batman. Now, there is absolutely no debate. It is LeBron James' team. The burden, the onus, if you will, falls on LeBron's broad shoulders to take this team home.
On the basketball court as a player.
As a player.
But as a leader in that locker room, entirely Dwyane Wade. And I won't say entirely because they listen to LeBron as well. But Dwyane has a very powerful voice because, Skip, you got to remember something about athletes. They don't really hold injuries against you. When you're injured, that's entirely different. What they measure is when you're healthy, what can you do? What would you do? What have you done? And with Dwyane Wade, that ain't a question. This dude's a two-time champion, okay? He's been to the finals 3 times. He's an NBA Finals MVP. You're not questioning the basketball credentials of Dwyane Wade, which makes it easier for him to have a voice even though he's injured.
Stephen A., let's talk about your Knicks. Knicks Nation on high alert this evening. Pacers